Hey, what's up guys? I'm finally back on YouTube after taking a few month hiatus for making videos, and I wanted to kind of start back in the trend of doing videos by doing an update to one of my most popular videos to date, and it was one of the last videos I actually uploaded, and it was where I discussed camera rumors. It generated a lot of discussion and a lot of views and a lot of dislikes, but especially whenever I talked about the 5D Mark IV. And so I have been planning to do this update video for a while, but there wasn't a lot of new information floating around about the 5D Mark IV, and I didn't just want to regurgitate old information. But there is a little bit of new information floating around, and I also wanted to do this video because earlier this week Tony Northrup released kind of his predictions for where he thinks the camera world is going to go in the next year to a year and a half. And that information's made its way all around the camera web, and all these different forums and websites are posting his predictions. But there hasn't been much elaboration on what he said, or much questioning of what he said, I guess, is the best way to put it. Before I go any further, I just want to say I'm not dissing Tony Northrup at all. I think he's an incredibly intelligent individual. I'm personally a big fan of his. Well, I'm actually a big fan of Chelsea's, but Tony's okay too. But he's a wealth of information. I learned a lot watching his channel. I still watch his channel. He's one of a handful of photography channels that I'm actually subscribed to. So I'm not at all dissing him. But unfortunately, in the internet age, if two people don't agree on something, people want to take it negatively and make it into this big thing. And that's not the case. I just simply have a difference of opinion than Tony of where I think that a lot of this is going to go. And you have to understand that when we come up with predictions of what we think is going to happen, it's based a lot on our own personal preferences. And Tony has a personal preference, it seems, for high-resolution sensors. He shoots a lot of, like landscapes and things like that. He's shooting at ISO 100 to keep his images clean, and he likes to have those ultra-high-resolution cameras to be able to get a lot of detail. He likes the 5DS, the Nikon D810, the Sony A7R II, all great cameras in their own way. But for me personally, for example, I think ISO performance is more important than megapixels. So I would think that the camera makers that everybody thinks like me, and the camera makers would put more or better ISO performance in the cameras. So we let our personal preferences kind of guide us on what we think is going to happen, and I think that might be a little bit of where Tony and I have a difference of opinion. So let's jump right into it. The Canon 5D Mark IV has generated a lot of buzz the last several months online. It is probably, I would have to say, it's the most anticipated camera to come out since I started following Camera Rumors. There are all kinds of people on blogs and forums talking about it. There have been a bunch of clickbait articles. People have just posted bogus information all over the web. You've got people who've made multiple predictions that the camera was going to be released, and those days came and passed and it didn't happen. And it's kind of comical how much interest and how much anger people have about this camera. I saw in one forum where two people got into a huge argument because one thought the camera was going to be named the 5D Mark IV and someone else thought it was going to be named the 5DX. And they were calling each other all kinds of names because they thought the other one was dumb for not having the correct name. The reality is we don't know exactly what it's going to be called. I'm pretty confident it's going to be called the 5D Mark IV, and I'm pretty confident that Tony's wrong about when the camera is going to be released. I think it's going to be announced leading up to Photokina, and then it'll start shipping in about October. Tony thinks that it's going to come out in 2017 and that the 6D Mark II will come out this year. I've formed my opinion, and I'm basing that on a couple of things. One is that I think that the 5D Mark IV is going to come out in September because CanonRumors.com says it's going to come out in September, or that it's going to be announced at least in September. And when it comes to Camera Rumors, I don't really know of any other website that is as accurate and credible as CanonRumors.com. I mean, you've got your Sony Rumors websites, your Nikon Rumors websites, but Canon Rumors, they really seem to have a good set of people that are feeding them information, and when they say something's reliable and credible, you can pretty much take it to the bank that it is. So they say it's going to be announced in September, so I believe it's going to be announced in September. Plus, I think that it makes better business sense for Canon to release the 5D Mark IV before the 6D Mark II. One of the reasons why I think that Canon dragged their feet on releasing the 5D Mark IV, and I do believe that they've kind of dragged their feet, I think that this camera's probably been ready for them to do their final testing and put into production for probably close to a year now. But I think Canon dragged their feet because they didn't want to hamper sales of their flagship, the 1DX Mark II. And so they have delayed it and just kind of let it sit on the shelf, and now they're finally in their final stages getting ready to release it. And I think the same thing is going to happen between the 6D Mark II and the 5D Mark IV. If Canon released the 6D Mark II first, I think that a bunch of people are going to run out and buy that camera, and you're going to see a lot less 5D Mark IV sales. For the simple fact that the 6D, the original one, is a very good camera. The only real complaint that I'm aware of with the 6D is, from the handful of people that I talk to that own it, is the autofocus system is kind of basic, and I'm sure that Canon's going to significantly update the autofocusing system with the 6D. It's going to get more focus points and all of that stuff. And so I think it's going to be a significantly better camera. And the original 6D also was a better performer in ISO than the 5D Mark IV, or excuse me, the 5D Mark III. I think it was either a half or a third of a stop better performance in ISO. So you're looking at a pretty solid camera. I don't know what the video features in the 6D Mark II are going to be. They're probably going to be better in the 5D Mark IV. But for still shooters, I really think that if they released the 6D Mark II first, and it came in at the price point that Tony Northrup is suggesting of $1,500, I think you're going to see a lot of people go out and buy that camera because it's going to be so incredibly inexpensive and it's going to be such a good value for the money, especially if you don't need the video features that are going to come with the 5D Mark IV. So I think for that reason, Canon's just not going to release it first. I think that the 5D Mark IV will come out first, but when the 6D does come out, I don't think that it's going to be an extremely inexpensive camera anymore. I think that you're going to see it come in a little over $2,000. I think that Canon's going to upgrade it quite a bit, and it'll still be a good value, but it's not going to be on the same price range as, you know, like an APS-C camera. It's going to be significantly more expensive. So as far as the 5D Mark IV goes, the other reasons why I think it's going to be released soon is because a couple of weeks ago, maybe a few months ago, there were some reports that retailers were getting a message whenever they checked the inventory of the 5D Mark III. I believe the term was end of the line, which pretty much means that the stock on hand is all that is left for the current camera, and that they're probably not going to be producing any more of that camera body. Well, Canon would only stop producing it if they were ready to start producing and releasing a new camera body to take its place. So you've got that, and then there were also reports that the 5D Mark IV was out in the field being tested by a select number of photographers. With all that information, it pretty much confirms that the camera is right around the corner. And then just yesterday I saw online that there was an Instagram post that was done regarding a Red Bull commercial, I think it was. And in the picture there was an unidentified Canon camera, and so the post made reference to testing an unreleased Canon camera, and it sent people in a fury speculating as to what it was. And I'm pretty sure that that's going to be a 5D Mark IV, and I think one of the people in the picture even said that it was in fact a 5D Mark IV. So I'm pretty confident that the 5D Mark IV will be here in just a few months and not in 2017 as Tony Northrup predicted. One other thing that I think that Tony got wrong about the 5D Mark IV is he predicted that it will have a 75 megapixel sensor. I just really don't think that's going to happen. The rumors all put the sensor as being somewhere in the mid to high 20 megapixel range, and I think that's probably where Canon's going to keep it for a variety of reasons. One is it pretty much defeats the purpose of having the 5DS if Canon's just going to turn around and come out a year later and release something that is significantly higher resolution with 4K and, you know, probably 120 frames a second, 1080, you know, and all of the other features that are going to come with the 5D Mark IV. I just don't see Canon pulling a move like that of selling a camera body and then just coming out with something so much better in a different line so soon afterwards. Plus, I don't think that a lot of consumers want an ultra high megapixel camera. I know that there are some, but for me personally, it's not a big deal. And to be honest with you, I really don't want a 75 megapixel camera. Could you imagine going out and shooting, like, let's say a wedding or a baseball tournament all day or something like that, coming home with 1,000 or 1,200 images and then trying to upload them or download them into your Lightroom catalog and build smart previews? It would take forever to do 75 megapixel images. I mean, it already takes forever as it is. So I think that for storage reasons and data transfer reasons, I just don't know that it's really practical right now to jump up, you know, more than 3 times the current megapixel range to get up into the 75 megapixel area. My 256 gigabyte MacBook Pro would be obsolete. I wouldn't even be able to keep one large photo shoot on my hard drive at a time because it would just take up too much space. So I don't think that the general consumer, the general even professional photographer is quite ready to handle that high of a resolution sensor. So I think that it's going to come in the mid-20 range. Tony also talked about the 7D Mark III coming out. You know, I haven't heard very much about the 7D Mark III. It would be I personally think that it is time for an update, but given Canon's very slow update cycle, I think it would be kind of early. We're looking at, what, 2 years since that camera came out. Canon tends to be in the 3 to 5 year range for updates. So I wouldn't expect one until at least 2017, and even then, I don't know that it's going to come out. As far as the Sony cameras go, who knows? You know, Tony mentioned that he kind of expected Sony to respond to Canon's high-resolution sensor. I don't know that that Sony's really all that concerned with what Canon and Nikon do. I think Sony's kind of went off on their own. They went this mirrorless route. They're developing their own technology. They're developing awesome sensors. And I think that they're just going to kind of let Canon and Nikon battle it out, and they're going to do their own thing and see what happens. I don't think they're really concerned with, you release this, so we're going to release that. I think if they see an innovative feature, that they might use it or try to incorporate it or build something around it. But I just don't see Sony being a part of that big game like Canon and Nikon are with each other. But, you know, but who knows? I mean, they may want to respond to it and come up with something bigger than the 5DS. And I think it is realistic that Sony could easily come out with the 75 megapixel sensor. Sony's sensors are just top notch. That's the reason why Nikon's been using them for a while now. And I think it's well within their reach. As far as the other specs, you know, there's so much information floating around about what direction Sony's going to go in the next year, year and a half, whether or not the A mount is dead, and, you know, all kinds of different stuff. And depending on which forums and blogs you go onto and which rumors you subscribe to, the information's all over the place. And I don't know of any real reliable information other than that they are going to release an A9 sometime probably within the next year. I don't know if it's going to be 2016 or 2017. I did speak to a Sony rep at Best Buy a few weeks back, and he said that not to expect anything full frame in 2016, that it was going to be 2017 until they had any new full frame stuff out on the market. But I do expect their next release of cameras in full frame to just be absolutely awesome. I had the opportunity to spend a few weeks with the Sony a6300. I'll be doing a review on it here in the near future. And I can tell you, I was very surprised with that camera, and I really think that their next release is going to give Canon and Nikon a real run for their money, especially for those of us that shoot sports. I think that their next camera, if they make even an incremental improvement in their menu system, I think that we're going to be there to where there's no more issue between mirrorless as not being as good as DSLRs for shooting action. As far as the Nikons go, I think that the Nikon D820, I think that Tony's prediction is probably fairly accurate. I do expect them to have a megapixel bump, and I think that camera might actually come in around the 75 megapixel range, maybe a little bit lower, we'll see. There is some discussion online, basically, that Sony will only give Nikon a sensor after they've used it themselves, that basically Sony's going to get the first dibs on it, and they're going to release a camera body, have it on the market for a little while. So I would pretty much expect Sony to have something in the 75 megapixel range before Nikon releases anything. But I think that it is plausible for both of them to have that within the next year. So that's pretty much it for the camera rumors. These predictions are always tough to make because nobody really knows which direction the camera makers are going to go. You know, I personally was very optimistic that the 5D Mark IV was going to see a big bump in ISO performance, and I really don't think that's going to happen now, because for the simple fact that the 1DX Mark II really didn't have any improvement in the ISO performance. There was some improvement in the dynamic range, which is great, but I don't see Canon putting the 5D Mark IV as a better low light performer than the 1DX Mark II, and so I think that, you know, for my wish list, the ISO performance just isn't going to be improved. And it's really going to be interesting to see what happens with that camera, because I really think that that's probably the most anticipated camera right now, because almost all of the professional photographers that I know in my area use a 5D Mark III. There are a couple that, you know, have a 6D as a backup. There's one shooting on Nikon, and a couple people are starting slowly to transition to Sony. But I only know 2 people personally that own a 1DX, and one's a hobbyist photographer. He's not even a full-time professional photographer. And so, you know, I think that the 5D Mark IV is kind of the bread and butter of the portrait and wedding industry and event photography industry here in my area, at least, and I would assume that that applies to most other areas. And so I think that this camera is just unbelievably anticipated because we're all itching for an upgrade. And Canon just has dragged their feet on giving it to us. And whether or not that's going to be a good idea or a bad idea, only time will tell. but I know we've been holding our breath for a while. Anyways, if you guys have any other thoughts, or you guys think I'm dumb and you don't agree with my speculation as to what's going to happen, leave me a comment below. I'd love to hear from you guys. I plan on putting out a whole bunch more videos here in the next couple of weeks on a bunch of different topics that I've been just thinking about and planning to put out, but I just hadn't had the time, and now I think I finally have got things set up that I can get these out and get you guys a whole bunch of new content. So thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day.